Can you beat Crash Bandicoot 4 without the spin button? That's what we're going to find out today. For those who have not played Crash Bandicoot 4, spinning is when Crash Bandicoot spins around in a circle in a wide range that destroys blocks and kills enemies. It's more useful than jumping on the enemies or sliding into them because it has a longer range. And that's why this challenge is going to be hard and maybe even impossible. Let's get into it. For the first little while of this footage, you see me breaking a lot of boxes, but that's pretty much pointless because we're playing in modern mode where there's infinite lives, so boxes literally don't have a purpose. The main challenge of this challenge is, you see these enemies over here? They're very easy if you just run at them and spin, but instead I've got to dodge around them and jump on top of them. And those are really easy enemies, but they're still all just a bit harder without being able to spin. And here we see an active mask. They are extremely useful since things that you would usually have to spin through, instead the Aku mask acts like a shield for the next attack so that you can just blaze straight through them. At first I was a bit worried at this part, because you see this wall? It looks like I have to spin through it, but nope, I can just barely jump over it. These enemies were a bit of a pain in the butt because they're long range, and usually you deal with that by running straight at them and spinning. But here I have to slowly get up to this guy and jump on top of his head. It's a lot more challenging. You know, with me breaking all these boxes pointlessly, it made me think, should I do a run with this game trying to not break a box at all in the whole game? If we get 25 likes, we'll do that. Then we climb this mountain, and the first level's complete. Nothing interesting happened in level 2 or 3, but now we're on to World 2, so here we go. This section was pretty hard with a bunch of these chainsaw enemies that usually you would just jump on and spin at, but instead you gotta jump onto their head to kill them. It just makes it a whole lot harder. And I can't kill this enemy at all until I discover something later on in the run. But for now, they're pretty hard because they need you to spin at them. These big bosses are a pain in the butt because they shouldn't be too hard, but I adjusted myself so much to spinning at them that I would accidentally spin and have to just kill myself to reset back to the last checkpoint because that's between the challenge. And then even when I don't accidentally spin, it just feels harder to jump on their heads. It took me 10 attempts, which is kind of embarrassing because really they're not that hard. There was this section of the level that was just absolutely swarming with enemies. And that's level 2, done and done. Nothing too interesting happened in level 3, so we're on to World 2's boss. Are you ready for the hardest part of this challenge yet? At first it seems impossible because these guys have fire on their head, which means we would have to spin, until I realized you can slide into them. Sliding is going to be our best friend for the rest of this challenge. And then we just rinse and repeat 3 times, and then we're to the final stage. This stage was really hard because of the small moving platforms, which means I have to land on them and then slide into them on these tiny little moving platforms. And sliding slows you down as well, which makes it even harder to jump off of it, as well as discs flying at you. So yeah, it was really hard, but still possible. 20 attempts later, and the first boss is defeated. The challenge only gets harder from here. We've made it to World 3, the Pirate World, and it's pretty challenging with these rat enemies here. Usually you could jump up and spin them away to kill them pretty easily, but now that we don't have access to spin and slide doesn't work while in air, it makes these enemies a bit more challenging to deal with. And then there was this crab character, which you're usually supposed to spin at, but now you have to wait for him to turn around and then slide into him from behind. He is 10 times more challenging without spinning. Another level down, now to a new character. Things get a bit more interesting here. One downside is she doesn't have slide, instead she has this weird down smash thing, which means we won't be able to use slide, which, not gonna lie, got me pretty worried. But one of the upsides is hook shot. she can hookshot enemies, and it stuns most of them, but it kills some of them. A good replacement for sliding being gone. Then we run into this crab, who is invincible to the hookshot. All it does is freeze him, but I just jump around him and I'm on my way. And after a trillion more of these crabs and many deaths later, I beat the level with ease. This next level was pretty hard because of this one part, where there's boxes where of course I can't spin through them, and that's usually what you're meant to do to get past them. And instead of the boxes being a good thing that gives you extra things that you just have to spin through, they're a challenge to get past since I can't spin, and instead have to slide around them, and it just makes everything so much harder. But the rest of the level is pretty easy. Also, from now on we're going to be skipping over most Crash Bandicoot levels and mainly focusing on other characters. Now we get this mask that when we press Y makes us spin around like crazy like this. I'm not counting this towards a challenge. We are allowed to use this because it uses a different button and everything. But the entirety of World 5 just uses this mask as its only mechanic, so there wasn't a single challenge in the whole world, except the boss. Well, actually, the entire boss was easy, because you don't really have to spin a single time in the whole boss. Yeah, this is the easiest level in the whole game. Dingo Dial is pretty interesting, because his B button doesn't do anything except it also spins. But we're not going to use that because that is definitely spinning, even though it uses a different button. They're both the same exact spin. So, no spinning with him, only using the vacuum. Dingo Dial levels are pretty easy because he usually just uses his vacuum anyways. His spins are just a bonus extra to get boxes, not really used for anything in the level other than collecting boxes. But of course, as always, it still makes every single enemy just a little bit harder without being able to spin. This ending part right here was pretty hard with all these enemies. Usually you just jump through and spin on all of them, but instead I have to carefully grab all these bombs and toss them at them because jumping on them is a hard thing to do since they have guns. But with that, first Dingo Dial level complete, and then we reach this place. This crash level was probably one of the hardest in the originals to begin with. You have to ride on top of this thing and get all the way to the end, and it just makes it so much harder without spinning. Every box that's usually a help to get you across is suddenly a hindrance because you have to spin through them. Like right there, it's hard to even get past that because of how much boxes there are, and you can't spin into any of them. This took like 20 attempts. The whole ice world was just a bunch of Crash Bandicoot levels again, except for the final boss, which was pretty challenging. It was basic dodging until this robot comes out, and he is a lot harder to hit back at Neo without spinning. Instead, you have to freeze time before you attack him, or else you just really don't have the time to slide into him. This next phase was so much harder because there was a bunch of bullets flying at me at the same time that I would usually have just spun at the robot with its longer range and it not slowing you down like a slide. Instead, I have to dodge around these perfectly and then slow down time and slide into him. It's way too much to manage. And this last phase felt impossible for a while. Because look at this. They're just wave after wave after wave after wave of all these lasers. And then you're just jumping around them, which is already hard in the main game with having spinning. But then you have to wait for the robot to come out, freeze time, and then slide into him. It's just such a great challenge. The final phase took like 50 attempts. This was way too hard. There was every type of laser coming at me, missiles from the sky, ground falling out beneath me, and when the robot comes up, instead of me being able to spin at him quickly, I have to slide, which slows me down, which means I have to constantly freeze time, and it's just a lot to handle. And yeah, I sound like a broken record in this boss fight, but it's true, every single wave of this boss fight just got harder and harder and harder. But after 30 minutes of this, I finally beat Cortex. The whole dinosaur world was pretty boring until we got to this Cortex level, where, well, we have to figure out what the rules here are. He does not have a spin, but he does have a gun, which he uses the spin button for, but he also uses a different button. This level, in every Cortex level, is completely impossible without being able to shoot. So I'm going to allow it, even though it betrays some of the rules we have set. So we move on to the third to last world. At first, the alien world really was not looking promising. First there was that guy, which I almost thought we couldn't beat. And then there was this. Usually you would spin to get rid of that box, but we cannot spin. So it took me a long time to figure out how I was meant to get past this part. But I thought I could jump around the boxes. So I tried again and again until I finally got it. Look at this. You can jump around the box, double jump again to get past it, and there we go. Then we do that same thing 100 times, 10 times harder every single time, and then beat a couple easy levels, and we finally made it to the boss of the alien world. So on the boss, we just do a bunch of pretty simple platforming that doesn't really take spinning at all, until we get to probably the hardest part in this entire challenge. This hallway you have to run down. You see these things that are shooting lasers out? You can't jump over them, so you have to break this bottom part of them right here, which you would usually spin for. But since, of course, we can't spin, we have to slide, which slows us down, which makes bullets easier to hit us. But not only that, we have to be switching sides, sliding, and dodging bullets. So every single thing is slowing us down so much. But slowing us down doesn't really matter in this first part. But then you get to the part where they're chasing you, and you have to run as fast as you can. This was the first time in the challenge that I actually thought that it was impossible, because I had to switch sides and slide. And then, bam, I just get closer to his legs, switch sides, slide, and then switch sides again, slide. I get so close, but then switch, slide. Nope. I tried over and over again, 10 attempts, 20 attempts, 50 attempts, added up to 100 attempts, trying to get past these aliens. And I thought the challenge was over. Until, right before I was about to give up, I said, okay, let's get in a couple more tries. And I pulled off this rock. Got you. That was the wrong one. This is the real run. I had finally done it. It's beautiful. Finally defeated. And just gotta say something. I thought that this was the end of the game on my original playthrough, so I never actually finished the game a couple years ago. So these next two worlds, beating them, this is the first time I've ever beat them. I just thought they were post-game to begin with, because I was a dummy and didn't realize that the credits didn't roll. The entire snacks world was pretty boring, so I just skipped over that right to getting into the final world. Most of the level was just basic stuff. It was like twice as hard because of all these enemies having to slide into them rather than spin at them. But other than that, it was pretty simple. This part right here, if I go up these things here, there's an enemy on a platform. And usually you would jump at him and spin, it would kill him. But instead, the only possible way that I could kill him is if I land on part of his platform and slide into him, which is extremely challenging. So I ended up just using an Aku to get past him. And now finally, the final boss. How this boss works is he sends out these things on the floor here, and you have to jump on them for a while to kill them. And then it makes part of the ground collapse, making it harder, and sometimes spawning even more of these things to jump on, which breaks even more ground, until you've broken them all, and then he spawns an enemy that you would usually spin into, but it just makes it a little bit harder having to slide. And then honestly, it was just rinse and repeat a couple stages with it getting harder every time, until the final stage, which took me like 50 attempts. I know I sound like a broken record because I said that on multiple levels that it took me 50 attempts. But you know, it's a hard challenge. But after one final hit, we have defeated Cortex and defeated the challenge. Yes, it is possible to beat Crash Bandicoot 4 without the spin button. Go watch this video where I beat Splatoon 3 without Squid Form. It was pretty cool. Or go watch my latest video I've released right here. And I hope you have a good day. See you next time.